Everything must change.
Str8out University, Big John is the host with the plan. Time to wake the sleeping giant that lives in every man. Forget the ordinary path, that blueprint's outdated. We building legends here, totally self-created. You need the 4 pillars for total fulfillment. Money, muscle, frame in the game, that's the mission. Master your finances, forge your body, your mindset. Level up your influence, make them all respect yet. Stop settling for a life that's just a faded dream. Time to build your empire, make your own world shine supreme. This is the goal, let's get to work. Yeah, Str8out University.
What's good, everybody? How's everybody doing? I hope everybody's doing good. Let me try to get some of this stuff. Welcome, Str8out University. I am your host, Big John, running at you live out here trying to figure it out. Today's topics are going to be a little bit, some of them may be, well, a couple of them may be a little bit hot. One of them has to do with male frame. Is it toxic? Is it right? Is it good? Is it not? I don't know. I think that male, to be a strong man and to have a strong frame doesn't make you toxic. It doesn't make you, it doesn't make you an insecure person. It's about having boundaries. And I believe that to have a strong boundary is a good compass for you to have a good morals and to be a good stand-up individual. So the second topic is going to be about billionaires. The billionaire tax, that seems to be a hot topic right now about whether or not we should tax billionaires. And lately in California, there's been a lot of large companies that have left and hundreds of jobs that we've lost. So I personally don't think it's going to work out for us the way I think we want it to work out for us. So we're going to kind of shoot for that. So one of the things that I'm going to be talking, excuse me, I have a guest on today, and we're going to be talking about a little bit of these things. So let me go ahead and bring up my guest. And hello there. How are you? If if you could please introduce yourself to the audience.
Of course. I'm Miley. I'm 27 years old. I'm a chiropractor, so my highest level of education is a doctorate, and that is what I do. I'm also a health coach.
All right, so a doctorate. Okay, I got to dive into that a little bit because I used to work for a school district, and along those lines of education, I used to have a lot of people that would tell me, oh, they held a doctorate degree in A, B, or C. And I used to kind of, and some of those people, don't get me wrong, you put in the time and effort to do that, to obtain that kind of degree of education. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't very, the way I always took it was, look, I'm not going to call you a doctor because you got something in basket weaving. I'm going to call somebody a doctor who could do something for me, who's going to, not because you got some little plaque on the wall. So I'll be honest with you, I was a little disrespectful sometimes to some of those people, and it wasn't necessarily intentionally. It's because they wanted me to call them a doctor, and I'm looking at them like, well, I don't see you as a physician. And, I understand you're a chiropractor, but, I don't know. For me, you're helping me out. I call you doc. That's just how I feel about it. But I'm not calling the teacher doc because that's not how I feel about it. But if you can give me a little bit of enlightenment about that, when you get that degree, your doctorate degree, I mean, I understand that's the highest level of education within your field. Is that not correct?
There's some postgraduate work that you can do, so you can become like a chiropractic radiologist. So you have continuing education, if you will. So you can get titles on top of chiropractor, but yeah, that is technically the highest level in my field.
Man, that's awesome. I'm telling you. But in the way I look at it, you're the type of person that helps dumbasses like me when I break myself up that I got to go see because my back hurts and, and I'm a little bit messed up. But, I do appreciate, people with the higher education and higher degrees and stuff like that. So, congratulations to you. I mean, and you're very young. I mean, you're 27 and that's a lot of work to put in that quickly, so kudos to you for getting your doctorate degree. All right. Well, let me bring something up here. I currently have and you know what? I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to talk about billionaire taxes or do you want to talk about frame first? Which do you prefer?
Well, I'm really curious to hear about what you mean by frame. So if you want to leave the juicy stuff to the end, I wouldn't mind talking about money.
All right. Love that. All right. So let me kind of give you an outline of what I mean by frame. And I wrote some stuff down here because I find it very important to try to put my thoughts down as best I can, but sometimes I don't remember everything. But the Str8out University is a platform that talks about the 4 pillars, which is money, muscle, game, and frame. Now, the frame of a man, the foundation of a frame for a man is that it's built on a solid foundation. And I'm defining frame as not some toxic power play or anything other than an internal architect about how we are as people and how we define ourselves. And the difference is, like, when you build a house, you don't build a house on sand, you build it on bedrock, and that's your frame as a man. And how I push it is, as the world gets louder and more chaotic, a man's frame doesn't shake because he knows exactly who he is, and he knows exactly what he's about and what his foundation is and his pillars. And the core of for me, 3 cores of the foundation of frame is the value. Your value as a man is non-negotiable. You don't know what to, if you don't know what to stand for, then you'll fall for anything. And a man's integrity doesn't get checked at the room, when you walk into the room. And it's not about being popular. It's not about who's the loudest in the room. A man checks his core principles, whether he's honest, disciplined, loyal. These rules that you live by when people are watching you and when people aren't watching you. Those are the things that you live by. Your self-awareness is like the second part of it, of frame, is self-awareness is much like how should I describe it? Kind of like a mirror. You're brutally honest. You're honest about your own code. And you cannot master what you don't understand. Self-awareness is having courage to look into the mirror, acknowledge your shadows, acknowledge the things that you do have wrong and your weaknesses. Just as it is for the clarity of your strength. A man with a strong frame isn't perfect. He's just honest about where he's at and where he's going. And the last one that I have for that, and this is boundaries. I believe that by having these boundaries as a man, strong boundaries, is that you're protecting your time, energy, and your respect. Boundaries are the gatekeepers of who we are and our self-respect. You don't set boundaries to control others, but you set boundaries to protect your own peace. When you establish clear lines in your career, your friendships, and your relationships, you teach the world how to treat you. So I believe that is the invisible compass that we have as men, and that's the frame. And a frame is not about being the loudest person in the room. Some men may think that, but that's wrong. Frame isn't a weapon to be used against others. It's a shield you build for yourself. That is an invisible compass that dictates whether you are leading your life or you're being dragged by it. So that's my definition of frame, because there's so much more that goes with it, and as I alluded to before, which is you can have a strong frame and yet be a weak person because your frame is inconsistent with what reality is. So that's the narrative that I tell young men and men to push out, because if you hold those things true to yourself, you'll have great friendships, you'll have great relationships, and and people will admire and respect you for who you are as a man. That's my spiel on it. I stand on it, 10 toes down. What do you think? What do you think?
I think my biggest critique on this foundation, John, is that I didn't hear anything that spoke man to me. I think everything you described is what constitutes a sound and grounded human being. And I think where we can kind of debate on this is what makes these things masculine.
Okay. I'm a little curious to know when you say man, I'm not really understanding. If you can elaborate a little bit further so I can better understand where you're going.
I think I would agree that all of these things that you're teaching young men and men in general to value, right? So having your values, having strong boundaries, having self-awareness is all important. And I think, like, if I'm viewing this as a future mother, right, would I teach my son or my daughter different frameworks of this? I didn't hear anything in there that I felt like I wouldn't teach my daughter. So I guess I just question what makes this men specific.
Okay. For example, in a relationship, you know, we teach young men to we know how young men are supposed to treat girls, women, right? We're always told that since birth. We've been told, you know, you don't do this. You treat a woman this way. You treat a woman that way. You treat a woman this way. But what we never hear is how a woman is to treat a man. And a lot of that has to do with our boundaries and the things that we don't want to put up with. Now, if we understand our boundaries, like me as a man, you know, I understand who I am, and I don't cheapen myself for people that can't afford me. And I understand who I am. So in building that foundation, that carries over into my relationships. So if I'm trying to date a woman that I'm interested in, but she doesn't meet the criterias that I want, I have to be able to be strong enough in my foundation. And this is where I find men do lack, where they get into this relationship and they don't want to tell the young lady that, hey, maybe you're acting a little bit out of pocket. Maybe because they don't know where they stand in their relationship with a woman, and they don't want to risk their relationship. So a lot of times men will not say things, and they'll let this kind of go on and go on and go on. And then finally, I hear this a lot in relationships. Well, you know, he doesn't want me to wear this kind of clothing anymore. He doesn't want me to go out to the club anymore. Well, you know, when he met me at the club, he met me while I was dressed this way. But there's a difference. When, and I'm not comparing, and I get this a lot. I'll make a comparison about a car. I'm not saying women are cars. I'm just saying I'm gonna make a comparison.
All right, John.
I have to put that out there because people will kill me about that. You know, the way I look at it is that if you're in a relationship with a woman, the for sale sign is taken off, and you're not for sale anymore because you're mine. You're with me. Now, I understand that maybe you dressed a certain way, or you went to clubs, or you did something that was previous, but that was previous. Now, I understand that sometimes, you know, hey, you know, I don't want to stop going with my friends to the club. That's fine. You can do that, but just no, I'm not. My framework tells me I don't want my girl, I don't want you to put yourself in a position that I have to respond. Because see, the other parts of my frame as a man is that if somebody gets slick with you, I got to go out there and handle that, right? Because that's that would be what's expected of me, right? I mean, that's part of it. So if I know there's an asshole out there who's going to treat you like you have a for sale sign on, then I don't want you to put yourself in that situation. Now, maybe that could be you're going to tone it down either with your dress, or you're not going to go out like that anymore. Girls' nights out maybe not be girls' nights out at the club. Maybe it be girls' night out at dinner, or hanging out, or going to the show together, or doing something, but not maybe the same kind of activity. So that's the frame in which we build when we start. So as a man, when you've built that frame, you can say, no, I don't want you to dress that way. And if he says no, and you, not you specifically, and a woman says, well, that's insecure, well, then keep it pushing, because that's how I am. This is what I want. And see, that's what builds the strongness of a man and what he expects from from a woman that he's dating or he's interested in. So does
Mhm.
that clear up maybe that small avenue of
I
that?
think that's a good comparison. And I think that answers my question of how it's catered towards men specifically, being in relation with women. So thank you for that. I think,
I know we want to, and if I can ask you this,
mhm.
you know, I don't know why we don't hear more about how women should treat men. And we all we hear is one side of that. So when a man has boundaries, and this is what I love, I'm going to date myself here. We went to I believe it was our 35th class reunion. Yeah, I'm old. And and you know, I noticed that a lot of the girls that were there, and I say girls because in my head I stop when I see my friends and I always remember them at 18. I don't look at them as 54, 55 like we are, but I'm like, man, you guys you're single. All right, you're single, but they still got that mentality, that forever 21 mentality. And it's like, girl, you in the desert. You can't have that. You can't act that way no more. Okay,
Sure.
that's just and that's how I think. It's like when you're young, you have so many opportunities to you or for you to be able to get the best. And this is just how I look at relationships. Women date who they want. They marry who they can. Same thing for men. Men will sleep with who they want, but they will marry who they want. And that's how we are in relationships. And I know a lot of my friends, my older friends, they still have that mentality. Like, no. I'm still in the casino gambling and you ain't got no chips left. So, we have to look at that. But that's what I try to tell young men. Look, you should never deal with any kind of fuckery at all. If she does something that you don't like, say it. Hey, I don't appreciate this. I don't like this way. And my wife, and we met when we were 15. Okay, so it's been a long time. And like I like to say, I've been to Shawshank. All right, I know, I've been there. But we've been together for like 36 years, 37 years. And we've seen all the good and all the bad. We've been through ups and downs. And one thing that from Rip, I was like, she would do this thing like, shut up. And she'd hit me on the shoulder. And I'm just like, I'm just going to tell you something now. I don't want you to hit me. And I don't want you to tell me to shut up. And she's like, well, why? What's the problem? I'm not hurting you. It's like, it's not a question of hurting me. It's a question of respect. We have boundaries. I have a boundary. I don't want you to tell me to shut up, because then we become comfortable with shut up and it turns into shut the fuck up. And that's not where I'm trying to go in this relationship. And as far as touching me, as far as hitting me, I don't want to play rough with you. And that's just me. Everybody's different, okay? But I'm like, look, I don't want to play rough with you or allow you to hit me, because that could escalate to something else later on in life. And I just want to respect you enough that you don't do that to me, because I will not do that to you. Now, this is me at 18, but that's something that she was like, wow, I can appreciate that. So that was one of the foundations in which she found interesting about me, is that I didn't put up with that kind of thing. I didn't put up with that kind of nonsense. And of course, as we got older, things were, we went through our life's, progressions. So, but that's what I try to tell young men. I try not to tell men to get married so early, because they should concentrate. If you want to be attractive to a woman, now you tell me whether I'm right or wrong. My framework is, if you want to be attractive to a woman, you have to learn how to provide. You have to learn how to protect. So that's part of the money, muscle, game, and frame. And if you want to be attractive to a woman, men between the ages of 19 and 28, 30, you really don't have anything going. Usually, most men don't have things going. They could be on their path at 28, 29, but men usually don't start really getting on their path in their careers until their early 30s to mid 30s to sometimes late 30s. And then they're really going. And the way I say this is, women are vying for your last name, I'm not vying for a woman's last name. But you have to make sure that your last name is worth having. And in order to be attractive, you need to learn some things. And it takes time to learn how to be a provider, learn how to be a protector, learn how to provide those things to a woman. But it also takes time to learn how to build your frame, a solid foundation. Because do we want to build a house on, you only have a certain frame for a house, or do we want to build skyscrapers, which we need to be into bedrock? So like I said, that's how I try to tell young men to build their frame so it's strong, because there's going to be good times and bad weather, and there's going to be a lot of shit, but you got to learn how to weather those things and be static. You have to learn, because your wife or the woman that you're vying for needs to know that you're going to be that solid foundation for her and for future children.
Right. I think when I was younger, I would have disagreed with you when you said, you're teaching men to be a provider and what was the other one that you said? A protector. I think when I was younger, I would have thought I can do those things myself. And now as I'm reaching into my 30s, I am seeing the benefit of having those as a default in a partner, because you don't want to be a mom to your partner. You want to be a partner with your man, right? And that is part of how I think those values should be instilled. They should want to provide. They should want to protect. So I think the clarification there is that they should want to do those things. Why? Because that is part of what they need to have in that foundation, like you said.
Correct.
But I think I want to speak more on why I changed my mind between when I was younger and now. I think when you're not looking for those things as a woman, then you are constantly on edge about how you're going to do those things for yourself. And quite frankly, you don't need that type of stress in your life if you have a partner there to back you up on those things. So it's one less thing to worry about in my mind.
Do you find that to be I'm listening to how you're saying it, and and burden to me is like a very strong word, because when I look at the progress of about women and the age of marriage and what you should be looking for, I don't tell women like you should get married at 21. Like a lot of people were asking. I used to work at a elementary school, and we used to have these young ladies. They were called campus security.
Yeah.
And they were rather young. One was 21 and the other was 20. And we started talking about stuff like this, and and of course they had a similar thought process such as yourself, because they were going to school to be something, and teachers, I think, or something like that, something to do with kids. And I was like, okay, I said, and one of them had been in a long-term relationship. She had been in her relationship since she was, I believe, 17, and she was 21 now. And I was like, wow, so you guys were in the same grade? She goes, yeah, same grade, same age. And I said, oh, okay. What does he do? And he was a dance choreographer. And I was like, wow, that's cool. Cool. And he does, he does things. I'm not going to belittle it by saying little. He does these things where he does shows and they get paid for it and stuff like that. And he teaches the after school program how to dance and, modern dance or whatever it is. And I was like, okay, and when we started getting into some of the subjects of like, well, what do you look for in a man? They were still in the area of, well, I'm not really sure. Even the young lady who was in a relationship, she was like, I'm not really sure what I'm not, I don't know. I said, okay, well, what course does he have to have? Like, what does he need to make? What does he need to earn? What would you think the world is going to make you comfortable in? And it's hard because she didn't know really anything about the world. Either one of them at that age, they didn't know anything really about the world. But there's this thing that's a problem, because a lot of, like I was alluding to earlier when I was talking about the women that graduated the same time I did, they still had that same mindset. and they 50, they're 55, 56 years old, and they out in the desert because nobody wants them. And it's like, look, you're not single because you choose to be. You're single because nobody's looking for you. And that's a tough thing, because you've gotten to the age, you've concentrated on your career, which is admirable. Hey, you got your career, but you have overlooked, something that was a biological thing for you, which is, family, children, family, a nuclear family is what we all kind of strive for, or at least some of us strive for. And that bypass them, and they don't see that. And so I was talking to these young girls about, you can have a career, still go to school, and have a family. It happens. It's not impossible. So when I hear you say the burden of it, it makes me think, like, was it a burden, or is it part of the propaganda that's given to young women about looking at men in a particular way, which is not conducive of family, starting out early. It's about starting out later, which would be less family, because of what do they call it, geriatric pregnancy. And I thought, man, when I first heard that, I was like, that's the rudest shit I ever heard. Geriatric it does. It sounds the rudest shit ever. But
really is.
Yeah, I even went to my wife and I said, hey, have you ever heard of this thing called geriatric pregnancy? She goes, oh yeah, that's a woman over, X amount of age. And I was all like, holy shit, that's real? That's real? And I'm just like, man, that's crazy. I'd never heard of that before. But yeah, because I never put it, look, even myself, I try to be as open-minded as possible. But I hear these things, like I always heard biological clock. Oh, a woman's biological clock. I'm like, okay, what does that really mean?
Yeah, exactly. What does that really mean? And they haven't updated those studies, and that was only one demographic of women. We were not even talking about women of color at that point in those studies when they were studying biological clock. So right. Whenever I hear that, like, oh, your clock's ticking, I'm like, who's counting?
But you would agree that the studies do show that as you get older, things become more complicated. And
things do become more complicated, but I think they exaggerate it. And I think the agenda is to push women to get married earlier or have kids earlier.
Do you think that that's a problem? Like with women having children earlier and knocking out the family years maybe a little bit earlier, or looking for that a little earlier? Do you think that?
Do I think there's a problem? I don't think there's a problem with it by default. I think what we're getting to the meat of here is that young women and men are not being asked what they want in life soon enough, in terms of partnership, in terms of what they want out of life, and in terms of what family looks like and what it takes to raise a family, and what it takes to be that kind of person that can handle that responsibly. And I think I can have that perspective because I was raised by 16-year-old parents, right? And that is it's a good thing that they chose to take that path, bring me into this life, and I'm grateful for that. But then I also question, were they asked the appropriate questions? Did they know the responsibility that they were taking on? And I think more often than not, the young people today are not being asked what they want to do with their lives, even past college. Just what kind of person do you want to be? And are you currently in line with those values?
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. And as a matter of fact, I'll pile on to that a little bit because of the fact that I was in an educational system, working in an educational system, and I would talk to teachers that would talk to, young people, junior high and high school age people, and they would tell them things. And I didn't think that was the best information that they were giving them, which was, don't worry about, boys, don't worry about this, don't worry about that, concentrate on your career and get into your career. Don't depend on a man for your survival. And I was just kind of like, wow, I don't agree with that. I mean, I don't agree with that as being the only conversation that's being talked about, because that's all I heard. I never heard the other side of that coin. Like, hey, if you want a family, what you should do is probably do A, B, and then show the success stories of people who have women who have gone through having a family and still having a career and moving forward and doing those kinds of things, but they say it in a negative way, like, oh man, you're giving it up and you're gonna become dependent on a man. And it's like, I don't understand that conversation, but they down that side, but don't ever tell anybody that there is an upside to that. And that's, to me, that's problematic, because you're not telling, people this. I a friend of mine that I respect and I admire, because she also holds a doctorate, and and she's the favorite aunt. No kids, never been married, been engaged 3 times, and she's the favorite aunt with a dog. And it's like, I'm sorry, that's a fail. That's you took an L on that one. And don't get me wrong, I mean, she makes decent money, and she's a 6-figure earner, but what did she give up for that 6 figures? And is she really truly happy? And I wonder about that. She says she is, but she has access to children. When I say children, she has access to young adults, high school kids. And what does she say when the 17-year-old girl says, hey, I'm coming up on graduation this year, and I can't wait to start a family and get married to my boyfriend and, start my life? Does she tell her that's great, and give her the upside of that side of taking? Or does she tell her, no, you shouldn't, you should go to school and concentrate on your career. Don't worry about a guy and don't be subject to this. And that's what I think is wrong with some of what we're doing in the indoctrination of high school and in colleges. What do you think about that?
Do you think it's by default anti-family? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't know if it's anti-family, but if I'm going to say it from what I hear feminists say, which is a really weird take, because feminists really do have it's part of their narrative to destroy a nuclear family. That's part of their creed and the things that they say. So I'm not saying that what they're hearing is from a feminist standpoint, but it is an ideology that's given to young women in the universities, where they should not be dependent on a man. Well, you don't have to be dependent on a man, but you should learn how to complement a man, because it's his frame. Now, this is where I think we have so many single women today in their mid 30s and 40s, because they've utilized that mindset. And I hear a lot of this thing called boss babe, these more words. And they say, look, I'm not dependent on a man because I say this thing. Now I'm gonna shift just a little bit, because I want to get a reaction from you. I've heard of a strong, independent woman. I've never met one. Do you know what a strong, independent woman is?
Do I know what a strong, independent woman is?
Have you ever met one?
I think you've described what one is, and when that comes to mind, it's someone that focused on being a boss babe. It's someone that focused on their career, is that high figure earner. So they're definitely hit the spots of strong and independent. But I think what you brought up earlier, I question, are they truly happy? Because it seems like amongst those women that I know that are strong and independent and over 40, I do question if they're truly happy from things that they've said anecdotally, right? Maybe they've said an offhand comment here or there about, wanting to find someone, wanting to have another kid. And so it does feel a lot of the time that there is that window that they missed. And it's through just the small things that they say. It's nothing big. But I think I'm very observant. I can see people as they are. I can read between the lines. It's kind of a specialty in chiropractic. And so have I met one that hits strong and independent? For sure. Have I met one that's also strongly happy? And I feel confident in saying that they're good where they're at? To your point, no, I have not.
what are the attributes of a strong, independent woman? Because, like I said, I've never met one. I've never talked to one.
Mhm.
I've talked to people who thought that they were strong, independent women. But what is it that makes a strong, independent woman strong and independent? I don't understand. What is that?
What
What
makes
is
a
what does it mean
strong
they're doing?
woman? It means that they are making a living for themselves, a name for themselves. They don't, they might own their business, they might own their house, they might be, like you said, the aunt, everyone's favorite aunt. They're
Hmm.
taking out everyone for lunch, for dinner.
Hmm.
Um, Kind of along those lines. Like they're
So kind
not
of
looking to someone else to pay the check. They've got it. They've got it handled. They're not looking for anyone for help.
so they and I don't mean to be facetious here, but
That's
so
okay.
it's somebody that mows their own grass, pays their own mortgage, pumps their own gas, kind of like an adult, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't understand the aggrandizing of it.
The what of it?
I find this to be true of people who aggrandize their accomplishments and they make their accomplishments bigger than what they really are. And I don't understand that. Like I would never walk up to another man who works, who works 16-hour days and he busts his ass to do things and I see him pumping his own gas at the gas station and I walk up to him and I said, "Hey bro, you're a strong independent man. You go." I I would
I think
sound
it's
like,
because it's not as common. That's
well,
why I think men are expected to be strong and independent, and we don't see it as commonly in women, and that's why it's pointed out.
uh, and you here's and again, I look at it because I try to look at things logically.
Hmm.
And I don't, I don't flutter with things like, well, wow, because to me, this would be sarcasm at its highest. If I sat there and I saw a woman pumping her own gas, and I go, "Wow, that's amazing." What kind of fucking retard am I by saying that that's amazing? That's just you doing what you're supposed to do, right? You need gas, you're filling it up. Hey, go put gas in. You know,
Right.
I don't see saying, "Wow, that's an amazing thing," because to me that's not amazing. To me, amazing is, hey, that you have accomplished something that's not that's hard to accomplish. You don't get credit for things that you're supposed to do. Waking up in the morning. Look, I was a single father at one point in my life, and look, the fact that I got up in the morning and I got the kids breakfast and I got them ready and made sure their homework and their backpacks were packed and I sent them off to school and then I picked them up and I took them to practice and I cooked them dinner and and did their homework and made sure they showered, brushed their teeth and put them to bed and then do it all the next day. That didn't make me a strong independent man. It just made me a parent. That's all it was. And I don't look at things like that. So when I say I've never met a strong independent woman, when you when you when you categorize things that are just supposed to be done daily, that's not special. Like you said, if somebody gets a business and gets it up and running and works their ass off and does the 60 to 80 hours a week, yeah, that's special. That's special. But just to go to the grocery store and buy some milk doesn't make it special. So
Yeah,
that's
I don't
why
think that applies to the day-to-day activies for sure. I
so
agree with
that
you.
so that's why I'm kind of like, I wouldn't call it
It's
like I wouldn't call
probably
it.
overused.
And I agree. I think that we've made the word so common that if everybody is strong and independent, then nobody's strong and independent. And that's part of a problem that I think we have because when I hear my friends my age and a little bit younger talk about how, yeah, I'm this, I'm that. And it's just like, yeah, but, first off, you're alone. You're not moving anywhere. And and this other thing that I hear, and my friends say this often, I am single by choice. And I'm like, no, you're not. You mean to tell me that if Mr. Right he walked in right now and he checks all the boxes, that you're going to be like, nah, I'm not going with you. And that man says, hey, you know what? I want to marry you. I love at first sight. I want to marry you. That you're going to look at him and he checks off all those boxes and you're going to be like, Nah, I'm refusing you because I'm on my healing journey. My ass, you're gonna marry that son of a bitch right then and
I think
there.
that assumes that person exists, John.
Well, but I trip out when we say these things that are like, no, I'm single by choice. No, nobody's looking for you. That's why you're single, because the guy you want isn't looking for you. So when we look at that, and I always hear women say this, I want emotionally intelligent men. Where are they? And it's like, you know where they are? Like ninjas. They're fucking hiding from you. That's what they're doing. Because men understand, like a man who has his shit together and he knows what he wants in the world, and you're out there talking about, hey, I'm a boss babe and all this shit. He looks at that and goes, no, thank you. And he walks the other way. You never see him. Like women curb men.
Why would he say no, thank you? I'm curious.
Because men in general who have their shit together and understand emotional intelligence, and I use that word because I hear that a lot, understands that he doesn't want a problem. Now, if you're projecting a problem, how much investment do I want to make? And I think that we can generally agree that the hotter a woman is, the more a man is going to put up with her shit. But at some point, all men have a breaking point. Look, Halle Berry, single, who at one point was considered the most beautiful woman in the world. Why is she single? Because she's a fucking problem. She's a problem. Kim Kardashian, supposedly one of the sexiest women in the world. Why? Why is she single? Because she's a fucking problem.
She's a problem.
That's right. Men, emotionally intelligent men, are not even going to give you the time of day. And you'll never know it because he's like a ninja. He just blends back and walks the other way and doesn't even look at you, doesn't give you the time of day. You may say hi, and he's all like, oh, hi, how are you? Hang on, let me go do something over here. And you never see that guy again because you're projecting a problem. Now, that's a man with a strong frame. Now, for the women, and I've heard this, I don't know, maybe you've heard this term. I love these terms. A pick-me. Have you ever heard of a woman be called a pick-me?
Yes, I've heard of that phrase.
Okay. Awesome. I was pick me. What the fuck is that? Like, what is that? So as I was explained, it's a woman who ideology wise wants to be on the path of a man, and she accepts his frame, what his path is, and she can agree with that. That's the frame and the framework in which she can live with that person and sees possibly a future because he checks off those boxes and she can agree with it. And those people are called pick-me's. And I'm like, why is that a pick-me? Why is that a bad thing? Oh, she's just trying to placate to men, and that's not what a man really wants. And I love that part too when I hear women always tell me, well, what a real man is. And I'm just like, really? You're gonna tell me what a real man is? All right, cool, tell me. And a real man wants pushback. And I'm like, what fucking guy is that? What I don't know. I mean, have you ever heard that? Do you think, I'm gonna ask you, do you think men want pushback from a woman?
I think it depends on the situation.
Oof, what situation? Explain to me.
The situation that they want pushback is where they're trying to push our buttons, right? So when it's intentional, when they want a playfulness, that kind of energy.
Okay.
Right? There's
agree.
When they're being playful.
I
Anything
agree.
serious, then no.
Yeah, okay. I like you, and I don't want to get you mad. Okay, so
you can get me mad. I don't. Okay, we're not even close, John.
All right. So let me push it a little bit.
Okay.
You ever shit test a person that you've been with, like a past relationship? I just want to.
Oh, I'm a button pusher.
Okay.
Yes.
So you shit test, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know something he don't like, and you know he don't like it, but you're gonna push that a little bit because you want to see if he's going to accept it, right?
Sure.
Now, if he accepts it, he's a sucker.
A little bit.
Yeah. See, that's where people lose respect. This is where the frame of a man comes in, because if you're gonna shit test me and I'm gonna put up with it, that means I'm gonna have to eat a little more shit later, and I ain't eating any shit because I know who I am and I know what I'm about, and it's gonna stop right here. And if you don't like that, then keep that shit pushing, keep it moving. See, that's what I mean by an emotionally intelligent man who's got a strong frame. He understands he is not going to compromise himself in any way, shape, or form. He's not going to compromise his respect, his self-respect. He's not going to compromise those things. Now, can that man, I'm going to ask you the question this way, can that man be looked at as toxic?
I think it depends on how they're communicating. You mentioned when you were 18 and when you were talking to your wife about, her not like playfully patting you or slapping you or saying shut up because you wouldn't want to get used to that language or that behavior escalating.
Mhm.
I think it can be toxic when they don't give a woman clarity in that boundary and why it exists. If you're going to tell her, no, don't do that, but not offer explanation of how you want to be treated or why that bothers you, or, if it was a
Right.
less than thoughtful gesture on her part, then, that's a communication issue.
I agree.
Is it
I don't disagree with that.
toxic? It just depends on the temperament. I think that it's how you respond. It's all on how you respond.
Got it. I can agree with you. I can agree with you with that by saying that, look, if I just tell you no and I'm seem like I'm upset with you and I give no explanation, then yeah, that would be definitely not a good thing in communication. But you bring me to something.
Mm-hmm.
Why do women tend to say that you should just know? Men should just know. Why? Why is that?
Why is that? And I'm
'Cause you hit on
giggling
something.
because I did tell my partner that literally this morning. You should know. I think it's because we expect you guys to recognize patterns. All humans are looking for patterns, and that's why we do tarot or horoscope, or that's why there's that crowd that's drawn to that.
The moon is in retrograde?
Right, because we're looking for patterns, because that's consistent, predictable. We like that as people. And so we would like to know that our partner is paying attention enough to know or have some idea or try. We want to know that you'll try to attempt to read our mind. I'm not expecting you to get it right. I'm just expecting you to try.
Do you think that women are better communicators than men?
By default, no.
Do you think men are better communicators than women?
By default, no. Hell no.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Then why is it that women always ask us to be mind readers about what you're thinking? Is it the default we're looking for, that we're supposed to recognize a pattern?
I think, again, it depends on the situation. If I was asking you to read my mind about the grocery list, then yeah, I think it would be by default, because you and I should
know to buy cookies. I should know to buy cookies when you tell me.
If they're your favorite cookies and you know that I like them too, then yes.
Okay, and here's the thing about game, and I want to get back to the game part of this, because this really has to do with recognizing your foundation as a man. One of the things that I find rather discomforting sometimes is because women expect men to be women in the mind, and we're not, because that's just not how we function. See, we're direct. We're not covert in our conversations. We're direct. And because we're direct, we don't understand anything else other than direct. So for example, we're supposed to be able to read the cues. And it's so easy, right? Like, I hear women say this a lot. Men should be reading the cues. How come he doesn't understand? How come he just doesn't know? And it's like, that would be the same thing as me telling you, and I know you work out and stuff, but how come you can't bench press 200 pounds? How come you just can't bench press 200 pounds? What's wrong with you that you can't do that?
Are you telling me that men not being to read on cues is equivalent to them just not being able to, period?
Well, how about this? How about answer the question and then we can give qualifiers?
Okay.
So how come you
can't? Again?
How come you can't bench press 200 pounds? What's wrong with you that you cannot bench press 200 pounds?
I have not trained for that. That is why I cannot do that.
Okay. So do you think that you will ever be even training? Now, and I'm saying you specifically, do you think
Mhm.
that you could ever bench 200 pounds?
Oh man, I'm 5 foot and then some,
Yeah.
120.
Yeah,
No.
you like a buck and a quarter, maybe, if
Yep.
that, soaking wet with boots on. So the
Exactly.
chances are you're not, right? I mean,
Exactly.
looking at it logically, you're probably not ever going to do that. Now, do you see how if a man sat there and told you, "Hey, how I don't understand how come you just can't?" Your thought process is going to probably be, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's because I'm not built that way. Correct?
Logically, yes.
Okay. Men are not built that way. We don't know to look at cues that way because that's not how we see cues. Okay, we work on a different wavelength because we're biologically different. We're not the same. You would agree, correct?
I would agree.
So that's why we can't look at it the way you look at it because we're unable to. We can learn things, but we always apply this logic to what we're talking about. And when we talk about it, we're direct communicators. You're not happy. And going like, no, that's not telling us a damn thing. That's like, well, wait a minute, but why? What? How? Where did this happen? What happened? And that's why men can't communicate that way.
Got it.
It's our framework. It's part of our framework because we when we talk about frame, we talk about being honest. Now, remember some of the pillars and some of the attributes within that pillar of frame is about learning yourself in a mirror, learning
Hmm.
yourself and understanding and being honest with yourself and being honest with those around you, your friends, your coworkers, and your relationships, and being honest and upfront. And that sometimes is what holds us in our place, but yet we're two different people. If you need and want something from me, it's not about me figuring it out. It's about you telling me what you need so I can provide you with what you want.
Got it.
Make sense?
Yes. I think
My wife hates that.
I think when you say that, men can't because you're not built that way, that registers in my mind at least that it's like weaponized incompetence. Have you heard of that phrase?
No, but I love it already. Please explain.
So, like using the grocery list as an example, right? If you notice that your favorite sauce or your favorite snack's not in there, you're gonna throw it on the grocery list, or tell me, or when we go to the grocery store together or by yourself, you're gonna go
Mhm.
get that thing that's missing,
Mhm.
right? And then they come back without the snack or the drink or whatever it is in particular, and the woman's like, "Why didn't you go get that?" It's like, well, it wasn't on the list. It's like, well, you know that you eat those. It's just I think you explained it well, and I understand it from your point of view of like you're just not built that way. But I think that's a cop out. I think if this is a recurrent issue, there's systems that the partnership can put in place to prevent that going forward. And that's just a small example, the grocery list, right? But when
Right.
it comes to noticing things about your partner, I think that is again patterns that I think you could
That
stand to
yes.
pick up on.
Yes. There are things uh being in a relationship and understanding that I, in order for me to understand women, I have to understand certain things. But my goals, see here's where we get into my goals. There's a different goal that I have for dating than I would have for looking for a woman that I want as a wife. There are different
Mm,
goals that I'm going to have. Now, when I'm in that relationship, you're absolutely correct when you say that I need to understand you better so we can have a better relationship. But my frame is such that if we move in a certain way, then we're going to move that way. We're not gonna have this I'm gonna guess who you are. Now part of that is you understanding me, which would
mhm.
be you understanding how I'm not going to guess 20 things. I may ask you about three different things that maybe I think that's what it is. And then if you say no, then I'm not going to continue guessing because it's for you to now tell me what it is that you're upset about or what it is that I did or didn't do that's making you upset. And this is where I think that we have a problem of responsibility. And this goes back to, if I can jump back a couple of steps, this goes back to how men are told to treat women, but how women are not told to treat men.
Right.
You know, so that's part of a problem. And if you want to have a good relationship, you have to be able to have communication without the Nostradamus attitude about, hey, you should just know me by now, because I know my wife since we were 15. You know, I've lived with my wife longer than I did at home with my mother, okay, at this point. And I understand her, but there's still things that will happen that she will be upset about. And my wife understands me enough now that she can say, I'm not sure if I'm upset with you because of something you did. I need to internalize that and figure out, is it me or was it you? And she internalizes that. And I give her that. And I'm okay, cool. Let me know. Let me know if it was me and we'll work on it. We'll work on me. But if it's you, okay, then figure that out. You know, figure out what it is. And a lot of times she'll do that. But see, we've gotten to that point. But that's her learning me learning her in a relationship. But that's part of the problem of the frame, because a man with a strong frame has to have a woman who's equally yoked in his way of being and understands that is a good process for them, because otherwise you're just going to have a push and pull. And this is why I say men don't want women that push back. I mean, playfully, yes, you're 100%. 100%. I love pushing my wife's button. I love it. I just love it. I constantly bug her, but that's my love language to her. You know, my poking, my prodding, my smile, my joking, my this. That's my love language to her. That's my affirmation to her, and her giving it back to me that way playfully is our love. You know, not antagonizing, but just love that way. And that's why I say men, and going back a couple more steps, when you said that the things that I outline are about people being good human beings, but part of it is the man understanding his woman and understanding a mentally intelligent way of pursuing his woman or his wife or the person he is considering that, and understanding them, taking the time and effort to understand who she is, what she wants. Like, look, if my wife was allergic to shellfish, I wouldn't be taking her to go eat sushi and stuff. Okay, I would need to know that, right? But it's about my wife. Like, my wife loves it when we go places. She just sits there and she says, I just sit in the passenger seat and you take care of everything. Where we're going to eat. For my wife, when I make reservations, I make reservations at about 2 to 3 different places when we go someplace, because I want to know, what do you feel like eating for dinner? You want Italian, you want American, you want steak, you want this, what do you want? These are the choices. And I have 3 different reservations. But see, that's me putting in the effort for her. I was very undecided about a lot of things, especially eating. And I'm sure you are too.
Yeah.
What do you want to eat? I don't know. And do you think a guy wants to hear, okay, well, do you want hamburgers? No. Do you want Italian? No. You want pizza? No. And you're like, at some point, even as a guy, I'm like, man, I fucking give up. I don't know. And then you're like,
I was told recently that there's a secret to that, John. And the secret is the man saying, I have plans.
Yes.
And then just going with it. I love that. I just want to know that there is a plan.
Yes. And that's why I try to tell men, in your frame, understand what she likes, what she doesn't like, and then make your picks from there. That's, you know she loves Italian, she loves steak houses, she loves the hibachi thing. Hey, you got 3 options. Okay, there's your 3 options. Pick one and take her to it, because she likes all 3 of them, so she'll take it. But there are some days where my wife will say, I'm not feeling this. Cool. We go to breakfast. Do we want to eat? Well, you live in the same area I do. There's a million Mexican restaurants around here. So I put it out there sometimes on my little foodie thing that I have. I said, where can I go for a good restaurant that's not Mexican? Look, I'm Mexican. If I want Mexican food, I'll just go eat at home. All right. I don't, I'm looking for a spot. Give me a spot, and people gave me some really great places to go around here, and it was like, wow, that was really good. but those are choices that we make, you know, that I make for my wife. And I sit there and say, well, what do you feel like? Because if we argue about where do you want to eat? I don't know. Where do you want to eat? Well, what do you want to eat? I'm like, oh shit. This isn't, you know, so I make a decision in that. But the pushback, I don't know men who want pushback. I just never really met one who said, yeah, you know, I love it when she argues with me when I walk through the door.
Yeah, I don't know anyone that would rightfully say that unless they're used to a problem.
Right. And so, like I said, the frame part. So did I give a little bit more clarity to, and I do agree with you, the outline in which I do talk about frame, it is about being a good person. And I think that we can all use that talk. But I think for men, it goes even further because of the things that I was talking about to you earlier about, you know, there are things that we accept and should not accept. There are things that we should do. And there's some things that we should, and I'm going to say this word, and, you know, I hear that this is triggery. A man would prefer a woman who's coachable. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
What do you mean by coachable?
Here's what I mean. A woman who's coachable, who's going to listen to what I'm saying, and we can have a conversation about what we're saying, but is willing to listen to how I'm saying something, not or what I'm saying, and not how I'm saying it. Get the tone policing out of what I'm saying. So if I make a suggestion, or I'm commenting about something and saying, hey, I think that we should move this way, or you shouldn't wear those type of clothes going out. You know, it's not I'm trying to control you. I'm trying to put you under my thumb. I'm trying to protect you and me from having to deal with bullshit that we probably don't need to deal with if you didn't dress that way. And understanding that, okay, I'm going to understand that I expect him to deal with something if something happens, but yet why put my life at risk because you don't want to listen to what I'm saying? And that's the truth of it for a man, because if you go out dressing, you know, hot like you were when we first went out, and I'm telling you, maybe you should tone that down a little bit. You're like, yeah, fuck that. I ain't doing that. I don't listen to you. You're not my dad. You're not my boss. And then we go out, and then some guy acts slick and, you know, smacks you on the ass. I got to go deal with that. I don't know what kind of guy that is. I get stabbed in the neck and die for what? Because you didn't want to listen, not to wear that shit that was going to cause that. I mean, is that worth it? I don't know if I want to be around somebody like that. Tell me. I see it in your face. Tell me.
I think it's because I'm listening to two different things in my head. Like the younger me would have totally been like, that's a load of shit. But now in my career and how I move in the world, I definitely agree with you. There are some things that you just don't do. Right. And it's not about control, and it's not about you shouldn't be free to express yourself or wear what you want to wear. That's not what it's about. It's about safety. And when you put it that way, if your role is to protect your wife, your girlfriend, and you're letting her go out like that, you know, whatever, dressed how she wants, then that is the danger. And how is she expecting you? I think that's going to be the conversation between you two, right? How is she expecting you to respond? Is she okay with a comment? Can she handle herself? Do you want her to handle herself? Is she going to feel disrespected if you don't say anything? You know? So again, it's an ongoing conversation that needs to happen between the partnership. What are we okay with happening, and how are we going to act in public and in private?
Right. I agree. And, you know, I want to dive into the younger you.
Yeah.
How does that come about in your head when somebody would say that to you and you're thinking, man, that's bullshit. I don't, you know, I shouldn't have to do that. Well, how does that work? What is the process there?
I think it comes with the history of relationships, but in my youth, when I was in a long-term relationship and I had someone tell me, you know, you shouldn't wear that to the club, I thought it was about insecurity. And I thought it was, they're just being jealous, and I should wear what I want. And there's also this trend, like on social media, or there used to be at least, where, you know, it's a girl when she's single and how she dresses at the club, and a girl when she's like, you can tell who has a girlfriend or who has a boyfriend and who doesn't at the club, right? there's the girls that are, you know, dressing like, oh, I'm looking for someone tonight. And then you have like a group of girls that they came here with their single friends. And you can see that discrepancy.
Yeah. You know, if I can, let me interject something here, and I'm not trying to invoke an emotion from you, but this is what I often hear and talk about. You know, you can dress. How should I put this? Okay, I'm gonna just do me here. You know, when you put on the hoe uniform, that's what people think. I'm not saying she's a hoe, but she's hoe-ish.
Yeah.
And that's already the group. You know, what is that saying? Guilt by association. Well, how do you expect not to be treated when you put on the uniform? And right. So that's kind of what a guy looks at. Like, look, if you have the for sale sign on, people are going to think you're for sale. And if they're going to disrespect you by approaching you that way, and that's not something that you want, and you want to rebuff that, how do you know that guy's not going to say, hey, well, you got the uniform on, you got the for sale sign out. How did I not think that this was happening? And I think that that's part of the problem that we have with men who are not confident enough in their relationship to tell women, no, don't wear that. You know, and that's what I think is part of the problem of frame. Like, today's men are not as strong in relationships because they have been told, demasculated, and that's the word that I hear a lot. And I think that it is true because I have this thing called BAMF, which is bitch ass motherfuckers. This is what a lot of men are, you know. And if I can bring up this thing real quick, I want to show you this clip just to get a reaction from you. Hang on. Let me find that one. Where the heck is that at?
That's one hell of a caption. Man runs away. His girlfriend gets robbed.
It's a rough one. Let me find it here. Where the hell did I put it? Damn it. Okay, I think this one's right here. Nope, that was not it. No. Sorry. I got I'm looking for it. Let me see if I can find it. Damn. Again, the technical difficulties I have about these things.
You're good.
Where the hell is it at? I have it on here. Where did it go? That's not it. I tell you, this is the thing that holds me up the most, is the fact that I can't figure out most of this shit. I know I have it up. There it is. Sorry about that.
This dude is a straight coward. This dude is a straight coward.
So what did you think about that guy running away? I'm sorry, I didn't. Did it come out right? I didn't see the whole thing.
Yeah, it came out right. Dang, why did he just leave her like that?
So would you be looking at that guy at that point, going, "Hey, yeah, this is the guy I want to be. I want to be the mother of his children."
Right? No. Hell no.
But this is the problem with frame. Like, he didn't know. I'm not making an excuse for the guy, but he thought, well, fight or flight. I'm flying.
Mm-hmm.
And because that was his framework, you know. I mean, and that's really a problem when we look at it today with people just not understanding that this is my frame. But see, a woman doesn't look at a man like that and say, okay, yeah, this is the guy, you know. And that's part of the frame. That's just one part of it, because the other part of the frame is being understanding in who you are and know that you're not going to let another man. I wish I had this video. I actually don't have it, but this guy walks up to a girl and her man standing next to him, and he's all like, hey, what's up? You know, how you doing? And he shoots his shot, and he's like, hey, you know, are you with somebody? Is this your brother? And then she goes, no, this is actually my man. And that guy never steps in. He never spoke.
She's the one that had to say that this is my man. That's crazy.
And then he was all like, oh, well, you know, do you mind if I talk to your girl? And the guy's like, no. And she's looking at him and she's like, seriously? And I'm just like, see, that's the problem that we have today. Men not understanding boundaries, not understanding. Now, granted, I understand that the woman was offended that he didn't stand up for her that way and introduce himself and say, yo, I'm, this is my lady. What's up? What can I help you with? Those are the kinds of things that I see today that men just don't even understand. I lose my shit. Somebody's talking to my lady. I'm like, who's you? Who are you?
Right.
Who are you? But that's how I look at life in general, because that's how I was raised. But he literally gave that girl his phone number and asked, is it okay if I give her my phone number? And he didn't say a word. And I'm just
He
like,
didn't say a single word. That's amazing. I'm astounded.
Is this where we've become? Because for about the last 50 years, roughly, maybe about 40 years, we've been told for the last 40 years by Oprah, Ricky Lake, Donahue, all of these people that men ain't shit. This is what we've been told. So this has really been a beatdown of man's frame. And men are being told that you can't tell other men to not be this way, because that's toxic. That's why I was like, is frame toxic? Because we're just talking about men being better men. And that's looked at as toxic. I've been told that the things that I say are toxic for men. What do you think?
I don't think those things are toxic. I think when we're talking about a man being a man, and when people say that's toxic, I think they're not being specific enough, right? So when people are saying that someone needs to be strong and they think of the classic, like, shut down emotional suppression instead of emotional intelligence, hyper independence rather than leadership in a man, control instead of leadership, and then like performance-based things, like how much are they making, what are they bringing to the table, so things like that, right? So there is a toxic version that lives out there in people's minds, and that's usually what the masses are referring to when they say men ain't shit, right? They're talking about the bad eggs or some bad behaviors.
But we're all put into that. We're
exactly
all, and that's crazy because I don't just because I think there are women out there that are, and I know, I'm pretty sure you know this, the 304s. You've heard of it? The 304 is basically just, when you put it upside down, it spells hoe. So do I believe that there are a lot of 304s out there? Absolutely. But do I think every woman is a 304? Absolutely not. And I think that it would be unjust for me to say and to categorize all women as that. And are there men that do that? Yes, there are definitely men that do that. There's one more video that I want to show you real quick, okay?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
He's got a weapon. Yeah. Look at him. He's got a knife, looks like.
The guy right back here, that's her boyfriend, and she's being attacked by two men.
Oh, geez.
Here we go. Just keep watching that guy.
Look at him. She's actually fighting the guy. Yeah. Look at him. He's cowering back in the corner.
That's sad. Look at they're strangers, total strangers coming in here.
Right.
So the whole neighborhood comes up and starts stomping on this
I'd be
dude.
surprised if they were together after that, because that would not fly with me.
The expectation, that's what I mean by when I say that, the expectations of what a man is. I mean, I can tell you right now, if I told you, what do you think a man should bring to the table? You have a list of things. And I can guarantee you that a man's list is way different than yours and much shorter, because most men just want peace in life. I want to come home. I fought today. I just about shot 4 people today. I just about stabbed 4 people in the face. And I come home and I don't want to fight. I'm tired. I don't want to fight today. All I want, and Chris Rock put this out there. He says, all I want is my big piece of chicken. That's all I want. I just want some peace, a beer, and my big piece of chicken. And then let me rest for just a second. And then tell me about your day. But this is what I tell my sons. I have 2 boys. And one of my sons was asking me, we were talking about some stuff. And I said, let me ask you something. Your wife she has kind of a new job, and she's not very happy about some of the things that happen at her new job. And I said, okay, well, let me tell you a bit of advice. This is what you have to say. Turn off your phone, turn off the TV. Don't even have the phone with you. Go into a room, sit down, look her in the eye, and listen to what she's saying. Don't fix it. Just listen to what she is saying. Pay attention and say these 3 words, and it'll make life so much easier for you. So when she's telling you about her day, you go, what? Nah, that bitch. And that will help your life. That's game.
That is game.
Because that little interaction that you have, that 10 minutes of decompression for her, now she feels better. She feels better about it. She feels closer to you. And she's going to go and say, sweetie, what do you want for dinner? I brought some chicken down. You good? Cool. I'm going to go make you your big piece of chicken. That's strong frame. That's understanding where you are. And that goes with game.
Right. I would totally agree. Sounds like a peaceful life, honestly. Just makes things easier for everyone,
Yeah, because like I try to tell them, don't fix what she's saying. If she's saying, look, her arch nemesis at work didn't fill the copy paper machine, and she knew that you needed to do 50 copies, and she boiled it down to none. So now you got to go get a new ream of paper, and yeah. Cool. That bitch. No. What? That's all you got to say. And then but don't say, well, you should have told a bitch. You should have told her that she needed to do that. No, she don't want to hear the fix. She just wants to tell you. She wants to, I forgot the word that's used, but there's a buzzword that I heard that was used. But she wants to just decompress. She wants
to vent.
Yeah, there it is. Vent.
We want to vent.
Yeah. You don't want to fix. You just want to vent. And that's hard for a man because he's looking at it. You got to realize biologically we're built differently because we look at it like, hey, Chuck didn't put the pliers back. This bastard used it, didn't put it back, and now I'm pissed because I'm going to go tell Chuck, you put that shit back. That's not women. Okay? Women, they want to vent. They want to vent. Listen to that. So what are the 3 things? What? No. That bitch. Tell me if that doesn't work. That works, right?
I think it would work on me for sure. But I'm simple.
But all of us in our core are simple. We just make it complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we got to stop doing. That's why I'm saying a strong frame, building a man, strong frame, and understanding those kinds of things that'll take you further in your relationship. Those are the things that we need to understand: who we are, and what we offer, because you need to feel comfortable in my frame. So when you, and I've said this before, when you hug your wife or your significant other, she should melt within your frame, in your chest, because she can exhale now. She can feel safe. She can feel calm. She can feel that peace in your arms. And if you can provide that in understanding who you are as a man, strong frame, your relationship will further in a more positive way. That's my take on frame. I hope do you have any other questions? I want to hear about the 23-year-old you who's like, fuck that, I'm a boss girl.
I mean, I put that to bed, but honestly, if you want to hear more about that, I think I was, thinking I could do it all on my own. I think I really thought that, regardless of who I'm with or what they're going to do with their life, I'm doing what I am going to do with my life, and I'm going to be successful. But I think now, there's room for both. I can be successful, I can have the career, but I can also look for partnership that actually works and that I'm not just arguing all the time. Because if I look back on those 23-year-old Miley relationships, I think it was really about not wanting to be controlled and not learning how to be in partnership or how to complement the men that I was with.
Right.
It was all, I don't want to be controlled.
Why does it have to always be so bad?
My dad, when I was 4 or 5, my dad's anthem that he assigned to me was, who sings that song? It's like, why do you have to go and make things so complicated? That one.
Oh, yeah.
He would sing that to me every single time I made like a fuss about something or argued against him. Man, and that every time I hear that song now, I get kind of irritated. I'm like, my dad just calling me out on that. But it's true. I was making things complicated. Why? I have no freaking clue. Maybe women are just wired that way.
Yes. And I've been saying that since the beginning. But but it's understandable. Like if I understand how you are, like my wife, I really understand my wife and I really understand what it's about. Why? Because I've been through all the war. So I understand that, look, here's where you touch, here's where you don't touch, here's what you do, here's what you don't do. And I get that. And but it's made me a better person, my frame, because she understands that at some point, like I tell my wife this jokingly, this is one of our jokes, and I say, don't make me angry, don't make me upset, because you know what happens. And there's only been really one time that I can honestly say that I was upset. Like I was really not happy about what she said and what she was doing. And I said, not right now. I can't do it right now. And she was just like, what? And she says like, wow, that really took me back because I've never seen you really put your foot down like that. I said, well, you never really crossed the line like that. So we joke about that one time. And that's the one time, like I tell her, you know what happened last time? And, she's all like, so it's a joke between us now because we didn't have to do that, and she understood that this was my boundary and, you can't cross into this red because these are the things that I'm willing to walk away from. This is my walk away point. Don't approach, don't get close, don't, and try not to look in the direction of that because it's not good. I don't want to have to make choices that are hard, but I'm willing to make that choice because I'm not going to default on my boundaries and who I am ethically and morally. I'm not ever going to push that boundary for anybody. And I would never do that to myself, much less the people around me, because there's a lot of people that depend on me. So, those are some of the things that I have on that. And I appreciate your honesty in some of this thing. And I want to dive into your mind about some other stuff because I have other things that I want to bring up about game that I want to hear your take. And I do appreciate you being honest and forthward about this because we have gone way over budget of time. You're very interesting. I do appreciate your honesty. Now I want to move on to the next subject. Here is let me see our next subject. Thank you again for your honesty in that, and I do appreciate it. And I want to hear a lot more. Here's the next subject that we have. The next topic is if I can. Let me see here. If I can give a small comment about this in closing for this topic, the mastering of a frame means no longer seeking external validation for to feeling whole as a person. You don't need the world to tell you your successes because you're living in alignment with your own standards. And that's how I take that. And I also say that, the action, money can be lost, muscle can wither, and game can fail if the foundation is weak. But a man who has a solid frame has the consistency of in everything that has a math equation to it, and that's the logic that we live by. He is the man of integrity who leads by example, go back to your core, define your boundaries, and start building from the inside out. Now, that's the way I think about it, and that's how you should move forward as a man. Now, the next topic, the billionaire tax. This is a thing that I've heard just recently, and I guess they're trying to get it on the ballot to vote, the billionaire tax. And I think that I personally think that it's a bad idea for this reason. When you take the scenario that's being described, and we take the wealthiest tax people and the death tax and the begins and all this targeting. When we lose those billionaires, then we lower the threshold of who gets taxed. And in New York, we're starting to see this trend of the billionaires all leaving, to the point where now they're starting to tax people that are their homes are worth, they have a death tax. It used to be 15 million, and now they lowered it all the way down to 750,000. And I know for some people that may sound like a lot, but it really isn't, because your home can be something that can have rise to the value of $700,000, $750,000, and then you are not going to be able to bequeath that to your children, for the simple reason is they're going to have to pay a 30% tax on that. That's what's happening in New York currently. So I think that this is a bad idea, and I don't think that it's going to help the people that we want it to help. And I think that by chasing the billionaires out, that they're going to take not only their taxable revenue with them, but they're going to take their businesses with them, because unless California is one of those states that has a specific job market, because we are the only people that can provide that. Because look at, if we're making widgets, and there's a factory here that's making widgets, and we're telling a millionaire he needs to pay all this money in taxes, he's going to take his widget company that's not exclusive to California, and he's going to take it to Arizona or Texas or wherever he's going to take it. And I don't think that chasing those people away only means that we're going to expand who the wealthier people are. We're going to expand that to a lower amount, because then there's going to be less millionaire or billionaires, and then now we're going to tax the millionaires, which is still a lot of money. But how far is it going to be before those millionaires will leave, because they have the assets and the attributes to be able to leave? As where people who are making high five figures and up to maybe with a family a mid six figure, like 120,000, we don't really have the chance to move like those other people who are more affluent. What do you think about that?
Well, I think this isn't just about taxing billionaires. This is really about how California funds like long-term stability in our infrastructure, right? So there's the intention of passing this act versus the real world outcomes. And so we can talk about the potential benefits, right? So a lot of the systems that do need help financially, healthcare, infrastructure, education, these are things that we've been wanting for how long now? But the question is the Billionaire Tax Act the way that we're going to get that? I don't think that's the solution. I think it looks nice on paper. I think if you're trying to get a majority of voters to agree on something, it is that something needs to be done. But I don't think this is necessarily the path to take, because like you said, those billionaires can easily, relocate to another state that's better for business. I hear business owners say it all the time. Like, California is just not the right place. And that's not just in Northern California, Southern California is the same thing. I've heard it from different industries that it's just not a great place. And that doesn't feel good. You should want to participate in enterprise. That's what America is, it's opportunity. So the framing of it sounds nice, but can they pull it off? That's the real question.
Right. I thank you. You said it very well said. And I think that, when we talk about these kinds of things, it makes me feel, and I'm talking about my feelings, not logically. Okay. When I'm talking about my feelings, I think that we should help people. And I think that we should help people that want to be helped. And I think that we should do some things as a society to help those less fortunate, and if I have the ability to help, I want to help. But here's the thing. If I'm forced to have to pay for something that I don't agree with or that I see isn't working? Why should I have to be forced to do that and to share my money because it's so easy to reach into my pocket about something that I don't agree with or something that I don't have, doesn't come with a restriction? Why do I have to pay that in taxes? Why is, I mean, it's not like I'm not taxed enough already about everything. Now, if I've worked hard to achieve a level in which I've strived and used, all of the resources to me to be able to reach a level of comfortability, money wise, why do I have to pay for something just because I worked hard and other people don't work as hard, but yet are gonna, we're gonna live in the same place or same places? I'm not saying that there should be, well, look at, if you've earned $1 million house, you've earned it. Then why should we give everybody $1 million house? That doesn't make sense to me. If you didn't earn what you have, then why should I give you? I'm not saying that people in poverty or people that earn less should live below a standard. I'm just saying that if you've been given an opportunity, and you didn't make the right choices with your opportunity, why should I have to suffer? And I think that this is going to be a problem, because when you're talking about billionaires, now, I'm not sure if we truly even understand what is $1 billion. I like to think that I'm smart enough to know. Nope, I'm not, because I looked it up. And I looked it up in a plain and simple way of looking at something. And forgive me, I gotta actually look at this thing. Okay, if we were to say 1 million seconds, so this is what I've written down. If we say 1 million seconds, how much time do you think 1 million seconds would be, if you had to guess?
I'm not great at numbers. Maybe a couple days.
Okay, it's 11 days. So 1 million seconds is 11 days, is what I heard this guy saying this, and he's some math guy. And I was like, okay, that's 11 days. 1 million seconds is 11 days. So what do we think 1 billion? What do you think 1 billion seconds is?
So like 3 months?
It's 31 years.
Oh.
So I was like, holy shit, that's crazy. Like 1 million is 11 days and 1 billion is 31 years. That's how far apart that is.
Right.
So when we're talking about those people that own that kind of money, where do you think that they can go?
They can go anywhere.
Anywhere. And they can take all of their toys with them. And this is my problem. Like, I've been posting on Facebook all the companies that have been leaving and all the jobs that have been depleted from it. So if we take these billionaires who own these companies that make, hundreds of millions of dollars, and they inject millions upon millions of dollars into the local economy, and they lose, 300 people, that's 300 people that were decently paid, that were paying taxes also. So they take all of that money, all that revenue, and we have a governor who, I'm a Democrat, and I'm not happy about the way that this governor is going about allowing companies to just leave, because, well, go ahead and go. We let Tesla go. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that Elon Musk is the greatest person in the world, but when you take that kind of money and say, okay, go ahead and take your companies elsewhere because we don't need them. Bullshit, we need them. Because if we're going to do anything with the programs that you were saying, how do we let that kind of money go? How do we let Del Monte go? How do we let Oracle go? How do we look at the corporations are leaving us, like, what is it? In-N-Out. In-N-Out's a franchise that was born and raised here in California, and they're gone. They took their corporation out of here. Wells Fargo, a bank that was born and raised here in California, has now left. And it's like, what are we doing? We have an exodus of billionaires and companies and we're losing all that money. So what's going to happen next? That means people who make $1 million a year are now going to be taxed like those billionaires. So how far is it going to be before the person, much like yourself, you work hard for your education, you work hard for your job, and then you gain enough that you're like, hey, I have made X amount of money, and I'm now making X amount of money based on my hard work. So now I get to get taxed. And it's like, that's just unfair. Like I want to say that there was I'm not sure if you're familiar with this person. There was a prime minister from England or Britain, Margaret Thatcher. And she said, it's so easy to run out of other people's money. And that's what's going to happen to us. California is running into what New York is going by. Now think about this. If you know people that own homes, that have owned homes for a while, they may have bought their house for $100,000 and some that may be worth $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 now. Right. That's not uncommon. In New York, those people would be taxed 30%. So if they passed and they wanted to give it to their children had to first come up with 30% of the $800,000, not what's owed on the home, what the home's value is.
It's ridiculous.
But this is where it's going. Upper to middle class people are going to be taxed. And now California is even going further. Not in addition to the billionaire tax, they want what they call an exit tax. I don't know if you've heard of this, but this is something that's on the floor, that if you leave California and you've been here for 30 years, you retired, like myself, and we leave California, they want to tax you on what you've earned while you were here in California. And it's called an exit tax. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I'm starting to hear some of them. None of them are good. Anything that I earn here is going to be taxed wherever I go. And I'm just like, this is crazy. But this is the overtaxation is what we're going to, and people don't realize it's going to follow all of us. It's not just the billionaires, because they're going to just leave California and they're going to go to the safe havens in Florida and Nevada and Arizona and everywhere else that has low taxes. And they're just going to leave us, and we're all going to be, if you're earning whatever you're earning, if you're learning, look, I was a very high 5-figure earner. I wasn't a 6-figure earner. I was a very high five-figure earner. But there's somebody below me who's looking at me saying, well, you should give me some of what you have. And how far are we willing to go down? I mean, because the person making $50,000 a year, which isn't a lot of money, a person making $50,000 a year, there's a person $30,000 looking at them saying that you should share some of that money with me. And then there's somebody below them, $20,000, looking at the $30,000 earners saying that you should share that with me too. That's problematic. We should all earn we should all make what we earn. But I'm not one for saying that we shouldn't help, but we should know what we're doing. And I kind of want to get your take on some of what I said about, billionaires. We're running billionaires away. What do we do when they're gone?
I think
I'm asking you to solve this problem.
Nationwide, there's a problem on how we hold the wealthy accountable without driving them out of state. Do
you think that we have to
go ahead?
Do you think that they're not paying their share? Because that's what I hear a lot. Oh, they're not paying their fair share.
That I am not sure. I am not an expert in taxes by any means, but I think if the consensus is that they need to be paying more tax, is probably more proportional to what they're bringing in, right?
So let me ask you this. I've dabbled a little bit in, we've had a couple of corporations and stuff, and there's a very big upswing in what you can use corporations for. Like there's a lot of things that you can, offset, because you do take a hit when you're trying to build a company and you open an organization like a corporation or an LLC. You you do take a lot of risk. There's a lot of financial out money, and you really, we used to own a gym, and we tried our best to do these things. And let me tell you something: understanding the taxes is an incredibly complex thing. But fortunately for us, I was smart enough to know that I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, and I hired the best tax person. And granted, I paid for a good tax person. I understood that I didn't know enough about corporation taxes. And even regular people that earn more money, you start to talk to those people, and then you start to realize, like, well, wait a minute, what does the tax code say about what you earn and what you can offset and what you can do this? Like when I heard Trump talk about he didn't pay tax. Remember when that whole thing went down? Oh, he doesn't pay his taxes and he doesn't do this and he doesn't do that. I wasn't mad, but I was like, how is this fool not paying taxes? What is he doing? I mean, because if he's not paying taxes, like, because I've always been told, you don't pay taxes, what, you go to jail, right? So I was wondering, like, well, how the hell does this guy not pay taxes? And yet
they hire a really good CPA.
Well, and that's exactly what you do. Now, here's the thing: you and me, there's nothing in the tax code that says that me and you can't use taxes to offset our taxes, buy things, use things, because there's good debt and there's bad debt. And I didn't know the difference between the two. And then I started reading this book by Robert Kiyosaki, which was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then I started reading other books. As a matter of fact, I even bought the tax code, and it's about that big. This thing's huge. And I started looking up things like you can use taxes to offset other taxes. So this way you lower your taxable income down. Like 90% of the tax code is about how you can make money, and only 10% is how you pay it. So, but we all think this thing, like, I can tell you right now, H&R Block, nothing against H&R Block, but they ain't doing those taxes for you like that. They're not telling you those taxes, but yet we're not. I don't know about you, but in my family, we didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about taxes because we didn't have enough of it to talk about. But as I got older, I started understanding and making a little bit more money and making a little bit more money. And I wanted to know these things. And so now when I listen to when we're talking about things today, about this billionaire tax, I'm like, that's going to hurt us more than help us, because those people are just going to move away because there's nothing keeping them in the state.
Right.
So how do we offset this? And my thought process is, look, you allow those people to pay the taxes per the tax code. And if we don't like it, then let's change the tax code. Let's not just overtax them, because when they leave, we all get taxed because we're the ones left here. We're kind of, what is it? When all the life rafts are used, we're the ones left on the Titanic. And it's called California right now. And I think that this is where we have a problem. And I know you're starting out and you're getting your footing, but I'm sure you're starting to see money a little bit different.
Definitely.
How much you willing to give to my insurance? Tell me what you think.
Healthcare is a whole different beast. I think there's just got to be a way, but I'm not the person to solve it.
Yeah,
and
I think
we're leaving it to our lawmakers and law writers and the people that are in politics.
And I think
it seems like a rough gamble sometimes.
We're entrusting that those people are going to do what's in our best interest, and it doesn't feel like it, because when I see all these companies leaving and all these jobs leaving us, I'm just like, damn, I'm not sure how we're going to sustain this. And I used to be part of the it was called the LCAP. Now that's an acronym for something that I couldn't tell you what it is now, but it had to do with budget advisory. We would get together and talk about the entire budget of the school. Now, I came from the Oxnard Elementary School District, which budget was, I think we were at like 200 million or something like that. That was our budget, our full year budget. And in that LCAP, it talked about everything. It talked about all of the things that we spent, everything, pencils, papers, everything, maintenance, custodial, teachers, everything, what the lights cost. and we talked about those things, and I understood a little bit more about budgeting and who made what and how much people were making and how much it cost for, all the bills to be paid, just gas, water, light, trash, things like that. And it's an exorbitant amount of money. I couldn't imagine. I mean, to conflate that to the state, that has to be some astronomical money. But, we keep talking about these things like, oh, we just lost $22 billion on homeless. Billion. Now, remember, I talked about what a billion is.
Right.
We lost $22 billion on homeless. We don't know where that money's at. And yet we're talking about, well, because we lost that, we're in a budget shortfall. So let's go ahead and move forward and just tax people. And it's like, no, I think we need to talk about where those billions are, because now that I know what a billion is, now I'm asking, holy shit, that's a lot of money.
That's 22. The question.
It's not 1 billion, it's 22 billion. That's crazy. But I don't know if taxing billionaires is going to help us. I just don't know. I don't think it's going to help us.
I think it's an optic
thing. I mean, and schools, we keep hearing about teachers going on strike and stuff like that because they don't, they say that they don't make enough money. But, I have a problem with some of those things because, our teachers in the state of California are the highest paid teachers in the country. And I'm not saying that they're not deserving of more money. I think that there needs to be a restructuring of how we look at teachers. But, when as a employee of the school district, we're bound by how many kids you have. And if we don't have enough kids, we can't afford support staff. We can't afford teachers. Look, if there's 10 kids in a classroom and we have 4 classrooms that only have 10 kids, we're going to collapse it.
Right.
And so we're going to do those things. But, I understand that they need more money, but I think some of it has to do with, we can't keep reaching in somebody else's pocket for what we want. I think what we need to do is look at trying to keep those companies here, trying to keep those tax people here, and help ourselves better understand the taxes instead of just blaming everything on someone else. Because you can be a teacher, and I'm sure as you're looking at your money, if I make $100,000 a year and I have a brand new G-Wagon and I'm paying, $2,000 a month on the G-Wagon, and I'm paying $3,000 a month on my mortgage for my condo, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, but I'm only bringing in $7,000 a month before taxes, about $5,500 after taxes. I'm not covering all the bills, and that's a responsibility of my own and not anybody else's. So just because my insurance rate is up doesn't mean that I get to reach into your pocket because I make less than you and say, hey, how much do you have on my, what do you got on my 40? Like Debo said on Friday, what you got on my 40? What you got on my 40? That's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. And the billionaire tax is not going to work for us. It's going to hurt us.
We shall see.
Yeah. I kind of liken it to the, remember when Governor Newsom suggested the minimum wage increase for particular workers. You got to realize I'm a union guy, 32 years in the union, 25 years as a steward. I'm a union guy. I was like, that's a bad idea. And some of my fellow union people were like, what do you mean that's a bad idea? I said, they're only going to hurt the workers on it. And they're like, well, what do you mean? What, are you against it? I said, yeah, because what's going to happen is they're going to make more automated systems. They're going to start laying people off and getting rid of people. And the people that it's going to hurt the most are the mom and pops. Those little restaurants, those little places are now going to not be able to afford the 12 people or 10 people that they have because they have to raise their wage to a minimum wage of something that they are barely skimming. And if you know anything about business, which I know you do, you have your cost out and your cost in. There's net negative and net positive. And they're going to look at workers as being a net negative because they don't make enough money to cover it.
It's going to make it a lot harder to keep them or, have a competitive workplace because someone else is paying more.
100%. I mean, and you're in an industry that it's you, right? You're dependent on you.
Right.
And that makes it harder. Now think about it. If you get, and I wish you luck in this, and I, knock on wood for it, that you get big enough that you can have multiple people under you and you're building a business because you're building your brand. And that's a great thing and a great opportunity to have. But we need to be realistic, and if you're going to be taxed to death, that you can't, instead of having 5 people, you can only have 1, but now you're not going to be able to service as many clients as you want. Well, that messes with your income. So those are some of the things that bother me about it. And I don't know. I mean, like you said, I don't think that we're here for the solutions. I think that we're here to talk about maybe how we should look at it as not just reliant on somebody else's pocketbook. I don't want to reach into your pocketbook because somebody else made bad decisions about their situation, because that's unfair to you because you're putting in the effort and the work.
Exactly.
So that is kind of our my take on things. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I think, the topics that we talked about today, just both economics and the male frame, the common thread here is sustainability. Where we're talking about short-term reactions, either policy or the things that we're standing on, that's not what creates stability. It's regulation, it's structure, it's long-term thinking, and being able to latch onto that.
I love that. Forward thinking. That's not what a lot of people have. Like, unfortunately, a friend of mine tells me this thing, and I say it's unfortunate because I believe he's correct in what he's saying. He said common sense is no longer being common anymore. And that's
too much noise.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? Like I say, I love it. I love the noise sometimes, but at times I'm like, wow, I really wish that we could have a better conversation with each other, because talks like this really promote forward thinking, because you may be right, I may be wrong, or vice versa, but at least we can have the conversation without yelling at each other and making, derogatory remarks toward each other just because we don't agree. So exactly. I do appreciate that. So coming to the end of the program, if you would please give us some information about yourself in closing out today's broadcast. What do you think? Tell me more about yourself. Where can we get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me on Instagram at dr.miley, so dr.mylee. And there you can find how I take care of people and what I do.
And you are a chiropractor.
I am.
Very, very good. A lot of good things I hear about you, and I do enjoy your post. And you keep them coming. They look good. I appreciate the things that you say, and I learned some stuff about that. And as I'm getting older, my back is hurting a little bit more. So I'm definitely going to have to go for an adjustment. Not only mental but physical. I definitely need a physical adjustment.
I'm sure. Thank you, John, for having me.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Please hang on. I'm going to talk to you at the end. And that is where we're at right now. Let me get this going. Thank you, Miley. I truly appreciate your time. Love hearing from you, and looking forward to having you back about some other subjects. I think that some of the things you said are absolutely fantastic and spot on. And I know we had a couple of disagreements, and that's okay. I appreciate people trying to correct me all the time. And even though I'm right, it's crazy, but I do enjoy it. No, just joking. But seriously, love to have conversations, love to hear what people have to say. Please comment, like, subscribe, tell us what we're doing. I respond to every comment. Let us know. Smash that like button, subscribe to us on Instagram, on Facebook, and here on YouTube. Thank you very much. And remember, keep this in mind. Everybody is entitled to my opinion, and that's why I freely give it. You take care of yourself. Peace out.
Everything must change.
Yeah, Straight Out University, the syllabus begins. Check the complex method that separates the men from the kids. We building with 4 pillars. Study the architecture, the lessons in the verses, not just the lecture. See the mind for the money, the muscle is the proof. That global frame is wisdom from the concrete to the roof. And the game is pure knowledge that defines your every action. A strategic satisfaction for a chemical reaction. It's a blueprint for power, not just a simple acquisition. The formula for greatness, a scholarly position. Straight Out University, yeah, the lessons in session. Straight Out University.